Have you ever felt lost in life? Or perhaps faced challenges so overwhelming that it seemed like there was no way out? In this video, we will share an inspiring story that is not only thought-provoking but also teaches us the true meaning of perseverance, courage, and hope. A story that may change the way you see life. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video as a form of support so that more people can benefit from this story. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest inspirational stories. And feel free to share your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments section. Who knows? Your story might inspire someone else. Dr. Elijah Carter is a world-renowned surgeon, a master of the impossible, capable of performing life-saving operations that defy medical logic. Yet, despite his legendary reputation, few have ever seen his face. He lives a life of quiet humility, letting his work speak for itself. When he is invited to Harvard University to give a prestigious lecture and later summoned to treat the governor of Massachusetts, whose illness has baffled the best doctors, Elijah embarks on a journey that will test more than just his surgical skills. From the moment he boards his flight, he is met with doubt and disdain. Flight attendants question if he's in the right seat. Hotel staff assume he's a janitor. At Harvard, professors fail to recognize him, mistaking him for an assistant. And at the governor's mansion, the medical team greets him with skepticism rather than respect. Everywhere he goes, he is judged, not by his accomplishments but by the color of his skin. But Elijah does not seek validation. He does not argue. He does not explain himself. Instead, he lets his actions do the talking. And by the time the world realizes who he truly is, it will be too late to take back their words. A story of perseverance, quiet defiance, and the power of undeniable excellence. This is the invisible miracle. Disclaimer. This video is a work of fiction created solely to provide moral lessons, motivation, and inspiration for viewers. All names, characters, events, and incidents in this story are purely fictional and are not intended to offend, attack, or refer to any specific individual or group. Any resemblance to actual names, places, or events is purely coincidental. Hopefully, this story can provide valuable insights and serve as a positive reflection for all of us. The invisible miracle. The man behind the legend. New York City never slept, and neither did Dr. Elijah Carter. Inside a dimly lit operating room, the air was thick with tension. The patient on the table had less than a 10% chance of survival. The team of surgeons had already considered it a lost cause. Yet, Elijah moved with steady hands, his mind calculating each move with precision. The nurses held their breath as he performed a procedure never successfully attempted before. Hours later, the heart monitor beeped in steady rhythm. The impossible had been done. The team exchanged glances, knowing they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Elijah removed his gloves, his expression unreadable. "Close him up," he said simply, then walked out. No victory speech. No self-congratulations. Just another life saved. As he stepped into the hallway, his phone buzzed. A formal invitation from Harvard University. They wanted him to give a lecture on his groundbreaking techniques. Another message followed, this one more urgent. The governor of Massachusetts was gravely ill. Specialists had tried everything, yet his condition worsened. They wanted Elijah. He read both messages in silence. Outside, the city lights flickered. He had never cared for recognition. The world knew his name, but they did not know him. And that was exactly how he preferred it. But soon he would have to step into the light. JFK Airport was as chaotic as ever. Travelers rushed past, their hurried steps echoing against the polished floors. Dr. Elijah Carter moved through the crowd with quiet ease, his simple attire blending him into the background. He reached the first-class check-in counter, placing his passport on the desk. The airline agent, a young woman with a polite but skeptical smile, barely glanced at him. "This line is for first-class passengers, sir," she said. Elijah held her gaze. "I know." She hesitated, then picked up his passport. Her fingers stilled. His name was right there, clear as day. Dr. Elijah Carter. Recognition flickered across her face, but doubt still lingered. She forced a tight smile and processed his ticket. At security, the experience was no better. A TSA agent eyed him suspiciously, selecting him for a random additional screening. Elijah complied without a word, used to the unspoken assumptions. By the time he reached the boarding gate, the flight was already pre-boarding first-class passengers. Elijah stepped forward, but a sharply dressed businessman cut in front of him, waving his ticket. "Excuse me, but this is priority boarding," the man said, barely looking at Elijah. The gate agent nodded at the businessman, scanning his ticket with a pleasant smile. Elijah exhaled slowly. He could have corrected them. He could have stated who he was. But he simply handed over his boarding pass. The gate agent barely masked her surprise when she saw his seat assignment. The businessman, now seated near Elijah, glanced at him again, this time with mild curiosity. "You must be an athlete," he muttered. "Basketball? Football?" Elijah said nothing. The engines roared to life, the plane lifting off into the night sky. The journey had only begun. The cabin hummed with quiet conversation and the occasional clink of glasses. Elijah leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes, letting the rhythmic drone of the engines drown out the world. Across the aisle, the businessman who had assumed him an athlete was still sneaking glances. It was a look Elijah knew well, curiosity laced with skepticism. The man wanted to ask more questions but hesitated. A flight attendant approached with a tray. She smiled at the businessman, addressing him first. "Would you like a drink, sir?" "Scotch." "Neat," the man replied. She turned to Elijah, her expression shifting slightly as if unsure. "And for you?" "Just water." She nodded and moved on. The momentary hesitation in her voice did not go unnoticed. Minutes passed. The plane glided smoothly through the sky, the city lights below shrinking into darkness. Then a sharp gasp. A middle-aged woman in the row ahead clutched her chest, her breathing ragged. Panic rippled through the cabin. Her husband called for help, his voice strained with fear. The flight attendant rushed forward. "Is there a doctor on board?" Silence. Elijah unbuckled his seatbelt. He stepped into the aisle just as another passenger, a younger man in a crisp suit, stood as well. The younger man looked at Elijah, then back at the patient, hesitating. "I'm a doctor," the man finally said. "Internal medicine." The woman's breath quickened. Her skin paled. Elijah studied her for a second before speaking. "She's going into cardiac distress," he said calmly. "We need to stabilize her now." The younger doctor hesitated. "We should wait for an emergency landing." Elijah ignored him. He turned to the flight attendant. "Do you have a medical kit on board?" She blinked as if debating whether to listen to him. The businessman from earlier scoffed. "What, you're a doctor now?" Elijah didn't respond. The situation was worsening. He turned to the patient's husband. "Trust me?" The man nodded desperately. The flight attendant finally handed over the medical kit. Elijah worked quickly, his hands steady, his voice calm. Seconds stretched into minutes. The younger doctor watched in silence. And then, a miracle. The woman's breathing slowed. Her color returned. The panic in the cabin eased into stunned silence. The businessman stared, realization dawning in his eyes. Elijah sat back down, fastening his seatbelt as if nothing had happened. No one asked if he was an athlete after that. Boston Logan International Airport was alive with movement. Travelers bustled through terminals, voices overlapping in an endless current of noise. Elijah stepped off the plane, adjusting the strap of his bag. The moment he reached the baggage claim, it began again. A uniformed chauffeur stood near the exit, holding a sign that read Dr. Carter. Elijah walked toward him. The chauffeur's eyes flicked up, scanning the crowd. His expression twisted in confusion when Elijah stopped in front of him. "I'm Dr. Carter," Elijah said. The man hesitated, glancing at the sign, then back at Elijah. You are Dr. Carter?" His voice carried disbelief. Elijah simply nodded. The chauffeur recovered quickly. "Right this way, sir." But the pause had already said enough. They stepped outside into the cool Boston air. The black luxury sedan stood waiting at the curb, sleek and polished. Other drivers cast glances as Elijah got in, their eyes questioning. The ride to the hotel was smooth, but the moment he arrived, the pattern repeated itself. The hotel lobby was elegant, all marble floors and chandeliers. Elijah approached the front desk, placing his ID on the counter. The receptionist, a woman in a tailored suit, barely glanced at it before forcing a polite smile. "Are you checking in for someone else?" Elijah exhaled slowly. "No. The reservation is under my name." She hesitated. It was subtle, but he caught it. The doubt. The quiet moment where she reassessed everything. "Of course, Dr. Carter." She typed quickly, avoiding his gaze. A few moments later, she handed him the key. "Your suite is on the top floor. Let us know if you need anything." The professional tone had returned. But the initial reaction lingered in the air. Elijah took the key and walked toward the elevators. As the doors closed behind him, he looked at his reflection in the polished metal. Different city. Same story. The morning air in Cambridge was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves. Harvard University stood like a monument of prestige, its red brick buildings soaked in history. Elijah stepped out of the car, his breath visible in the cold air. The lecture hall was across the courtyard, past students rushing to classes, past faculty members deep in conversation. Elijah moved through the crowd unnoticed, just another man in a simple coat. As he approached the entrance, a student in a Harvard hoodie nearly bumped into him. The young man barely looked up before saying, "Oh, sorry, sir. Are you looking for maintenance?" Elijah didn't react. He simply walked past. Inside, the corridors were lined with framed portraits of medical pioneers. Professors, surgeons, innovators. Faces that history had remembered. Yet few of them looked like him. The large lecture hall buzzed with anticipation. Students whispered excitedly, waiting for the guest lecturer. Some had read about Dr. Carter's work, but no one had actually seen him in person. Near the podium, a group of faculty members stood together. One of them, an older professor in a tweed blazer, checked his watch impatiently. "Where is he?" he muttered. Elijah approached, stopping just a few feet away. "Dr. Carter is here." The professor turned, frowning. His eyes scanned Elijah, then flicked toward the entrance as if expecting someone else. "You're," he hesitated. "You're Dr. Carter?" A few students nearby overheard. They turned, their expressions shifting from indifference to confusion. Elijah nodded. The silence stretched. The professor recovered quickly, but the damage was done. "Of course," he said, forcing a smile. "Right this way." Elijah stepped onto the stage, facing the sea of students. A few were still whispering, their disbelief evident. He let the silence settle. Then he spoke. And in the next few minutes, the room would forget every doubt they had. Elijah's voice carried through the lecture hall, measured and unwavering. He spoke not of theories but of reality. Of cases deemed impossible. Of patients written off as lost causes. He detailed a surgery performed just weeks ago, a procedure that had never been attempted before. As he described each step, the room grew quieter. Students leaned forward, pens frozen above their notebooks. Even the faculty, initially doubtful, listened with rapt attention. A hand shot up. A young woman in the front row, her brow furrowed. "With all due respect, Dr. Carter," she said, choosing her words carefully, "the method you're describing, it shouldn't be possible. The risks." Elijah gave a small nod. "That's what they told me before I did it." The class murmured. The young woman lowered her hand. He continued, pulling up images of post-surgical scans, proof of the impossible. Every doubt was crushed beneath cold, undeniable fact. At the back of the room, the older professor who had first questioned him now stood with arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Elijah finished his lecture and closed his notes. Any other questions? Silence. It was the kind of silence that didn't just fill a room. It pressed against it. It exposed every unspoken assumption, every quiet judgment. No one looked at him the way they had before. Without another word, Elijah stepped off the stage. The whispers didn't start again until the doors closed behind him. The governor's mansion loomed ahead, its grand columns casting long shadows in the late afternoon sun. Elijah stepped out of the car, adjusting the cuff of his coat. The air smelled of rain, the sky darkening with the promise of a storm. A uniformed officer stood at the gate, eyeing Elijah as he approached. "Deliveries are around the back." Elijah exhaled slowly. He had lost count of how many times this had happened. "I'm not making a delivery," he said evenly. "I'm here for the governor." The officer frowned. "You got an appointment?" Elijah held up his ID. "Dr. Elijah Carter." The officer took it, his eyes scanning the name. A flicker of realization crossed his face, followed by unease. Right, of course, doctor. My mistake." He stepped aside quickly. "Go right in." Inside, the tension only thickened. A group of state physicians stood gathered in the hallway, their faces tight with exhaustion. They had tried everything. Nothing had worked. A senior doctor, graying at the temples, approached him. He looked Elijah up and down before speaking. "You're Dr. Carter?" Elijah simply nodded. Pause. "Then, we've done all we can. If you can pull off a miracle, be my guest." No trust. No belief. Just resignation. Elijah was led into the governor's private quarters. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with antiseptic and fading hope. The governor lay in bed, his breathing shallow. His wife sat beside him, worry etched into every line of her face. She turned at the sound of footsteps. "Dr. Carter?" Elijah nodded. This time there was no hesitation. No skepticism. Just desperate hope. He stepped forward, rolling up his sleeves. Outside, thunder rumbled. The governor's breathing was labored, his skin pale against the dim light. Machines beeped steadily beside him, each sound a reminder of time slipping away. Elijah placed a hand on the man's wrist, feeling the weak, uneven pulse. His mind worked quickly, analyzing every detail. His condition, the failed treatments, the mistakes hidden beneath layers of misdiagnosis. The doctors who had tried before stood at the edge of the room, watching in silence. They had given up. They expected him to fail. Elijah reached into the medical bag he had brought, setting up the equipment with calm precision. "I'll need complete silence," he said. The governor's wife clutched her hands together, nodding. Minutes stretched into an hour. The room was thick with tension as Elijah worked, adjusting fluids, recalibrating medication, taking steps that others had overlooked. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his hands never wavered. Then something changed. The governor's breathing steadied. His color slowly returned. The erratic beeping of the monitors grew into a steady rhythm. One of the doctors moved closer, staring in disbelief. "That's impossible," he whispered. Elijah didn't respond. He watched as the governor's eyelids fluttered. A moment later they opened. A sharp inhale. A flicker of awareness. The governor's wife gasped, tears brimming in her eyes. She reached for her husband's hand, her voice trembling. "David?" The governor blinked, looking around, dazed but alive. His fingers weakly curled around hers. The room was silent. The doctors, the security personnel, the staff, no one spoke. They had doubted him. They had dismissed him. Now they had nothing to say. Elijah packed up his instruments, standing up. Without waiting for praise or acknowledgement, he turned toward the door. Before he could leave, the governor's voice, hoarse but clear, stopped him. "Dr. Carter?" Elijah turned slightly. The governor met his gaze, respect filling his weary eyes. "Thank you." Elijah gave the smallest nod. Then, without another word, he stepped out into the storm. The end. Some lessons from Story of the Invisible Miracle. Stories of extraordinary individuals overcoming adversity have always captivated us. Dr. Elijah Carter's journey in the invisible miracle is not just about medical brilliance. It is a reflection of resilience, humility, and the fight against prejudice. His story highlights fundamental truths about human nature, success, and the misconceptions that society often holds. In this essay, we will explore 5 key moral lessons from his journey, breaking each down with real-life parallels, philosophical insights, and reflections on how these lessons apply to our everyday lives. 1. True excellence speaks for itself. Elijah Carter's reputation preceded him. His name was known in the medical field, but few had seen his face. He did not chase publicity or seek recognition. His work was his voice. This concept is a timeless lesson. True excellence doesn't need constant validation. Actions over words. In a world obsessed with self-promotion, social media validation, and public approval, Elijah's approach is a stark contrast. He let his results define him rather than demanding recognition. Many great figures in history followed this principle. Consider Nikola Tesla, a brilliant inventor who revolutionized electricity but never prioritized personal fame. His contributions changed the world, yet he died in relative obscurity while others, like Thomas Edison, took much of the public credit. The lesson here is that true greatness doesn't need to be loudly announced. The loudest person in the room is often not the most capable. Those who deliver results earn respect naturally over time. Applying this lesson. Focus on mastering your craft rather than seeking approval. Let your work demonstrate your abilities rather than relying on empty words. Avoid comparing your success to those who seek constant validation. Real impact lasts longer than momentary recognition. 2. Perseverance in the face of prejudice. From the moment Elijah stepped onto the plane to the time he reached the governor's mansion, he faced doubt, condescension, and outright racism. The world did not expect a black man to be a leading surgeon, and time again he was underestimated. Overcoming assumptions. Elijah's perseverance mirrors the real-life struggles of countless pioneers who had to prove their worth beyond societal prejudices. One powerful example is Dr. Charles Drew, an African-American surgeon who revolutionized blood transfusions and plasma storage. Despite his medical breakthroughs, he faced racial discrimination throughout his career. Had he given up in frustration, the medical world would have lost a life-saving innovation. But he pushed forward, knowing that perseverance was the only way to break barriers. The unfair burden of proving yourself. For many, proving oneself is a choice. For Elijah, it was a necessity. Society did not grant him the benefit of the doubt, it made him work twice as hard for the same level of respect. This reflects an unfortunate truth about the world. Many are judged before they even get a chance to demonstrate their skills. However, Elijah's story reminds us that success is the greatest response to prejudice. Applying this lesson. When facing doubt, let your achievements silence critics. Understand that the world is not always fair, but perseverance creates lasting change. Do not let others' assumptions define your capabilities, prove them wrong through action. 3. Humility over ego. Despite his legendary status in the medical field, Elijah never carried an air of superiority. He remained humble, never seeking validation or demanding special treatment. His humility allowed him to move through life quietly, surprising those who underestimated him. Why humility matters. In today's world, humility is often mistaken for weakness, yet it is one of the strongest virtues. Those who let their work speak for itself tend to gain deeper respect than those who constantly boast about their achievements. Consider Mahatma Gandhi, a man who led India to independence without ever claiming personal glory. His humility allowed him to be an effective leader, earning the trust of millions. Similarly, Elijah's humility made him an even greater force in his field. Humility in leadership and success. Humble leaders inspire respect because they focus on results rather than their egos. Arrogance may bring temporary success, but humility builds long-term influence. People are more likely to listen to and trust those who remain grounded despite their success. Applying this lesson. Let success come naturally rather than forcing recognition. Listen more than you speak. True leaders learn before they lead. Stay grounded no matter how much success you achieve. 4. Breaking stereotypes through actions, not words. Elijah had countless opportunities to correct people when they doubted him. He could have argued with the airline staff, the hotel receptionist, or the Harvard faculty. But instead of engaging in pointless debates, he let his actions speak. The power of demonstration over explanation. When people expect you to fail, proving them wrong with words has little impact. But when you deliver results, their assumptions crumble. A real-world example of this is Serena Williams, one of the greatest tennis players in history. Despite her dominance, she faced endless scrutiny about her physique, her temperament, and whether she belonged at the top. Instead of wasting energy arguing with critics, she kept winning. Elijah's journey reflects this same truth. The best way to change minds is through undeniable proof. Applying this lesson. Instead of arguing with people's biases, let your success shatter them. Focus on achieving your goals rather than proving yourself to skeptics. Understand that actions will always be more powerful than words. 5. The importance of giving people a chance. One of the most striking moments in Elijah's story is the visible shift in people's attitudes when they realized who he was. The hotel receptionist, the flight crew, the doctors at the governor's mansion. Each of them judged him before knowing his identity. This is a painful reality in society. Too often, people assume intelligence, success, or status based on race, appearance, or background. Judging too quickly can lead to missed opportunities. Imagine how many talented individuals have been overlooked because of shallow judgments. How many businesses have lost great employees? How many friendships have never formed because of first impressions? Elijah's story reminds us that we must challenge our biases. The world would be far better if people gave each other a fair chance before making assumptions. Applying this lesson. Be aware of your unconscious biases and work to overcome them. Give people the opportunity to prove themselves before forming an opinion. Encourage others to challenge their assumptions and be open-minded. Conclusion. The lasting impact of Elijah's story. Elijah Carter's journey is more than just a fictional narrative. It reflects real struggles faced by individuals every day. Through his perseverance, humility, and quiet defiance of stereotypes, he teaches us that true greatness isn't about proving yourself to others, but about remaining focused on your purpose. His story urges us to reconsider how we judge others, how we handle adversity, and how we define success. In the end, the invisible miracle isn't just about one doctor's triumph. It is about the barriers we all face, and how we choose to overcome them.